sermon, but other things happened. I had a meeting, but I thought about Dr. King all day long. And on August 28th in 1983, my daughter Hope and I, my youngest daughter, went to Washington with many, many, many hundreds of buses and thousands of people to march to the Lincoln Memorial in celebration of the 20th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King's and just incredibly famous speech at that time. So in 1963, he delivered what has become the speech called the I Have a Dream speech. And perhaps its popularity and historic place in our American civil rights movement was due to the national television and radio coverage it received. Although the TV stations covered other aspects of the civil rights movement, they usually focused in, as they do today, and covered the occasional moments of violence that were perpetrated by some militant youth groups and police action against the peaceful and nonviolent demonstrators. And this broadcast fear and anger to the viewers. It was a time of great tumult. But on this sweltering day in August, viewers and listeners observed a peaceful multitude of people focused on the speakers at the foot of the Lincoln Memorial. But it's over 50 years now, 50 years since that speech was made. Almost 50 years since Martin Luther King was assassinated for his beliefs. What does his dream look like now? Great strides have been made, but are we there yet? If we look at the numbers of men and women of color populating our prisons, then no, we are not there yet. If we look at the demographics of poverty in Alabama, 1 out of every 4 children lives in poverty. No, we are not there yet. Nationally, 18% of children live in poverty, and most of those children are children of color. It follows through to education, too. More than 60 years after Brown versus Topeka, the Board of Education, school systems are still separate, de facto. They are lawfully not separated, but they are still unequal. After the killing of the unarmed teenager Michael Ferguson by a white police officer, the U.S. News and World Report made this statement. U.S. News examined the persistent gaps between blacks and white Americans, finding both the health and the justice system full of disparities. Many factors contribute to disparities in education. Lower wealth, lower health, lower parental education levels, more dealings with the justice system and other circumstances create a perfect storm that leaves blacks without the same educational opportunities as whites. No, we are not there yet. The media coverage of the deaths of Tamir Rice, Freddie Gray, Sandra Bland, and others seems to tell us that we are living a nightmare, not a dream. Most of you know that I've been studying dreams for about 30 years. Thank you for that introduction too, and I couldn't, and just let me put in that I thank all of you for the community garden. This congregation supports it totally. I believe that all dreams come in the service of health and wholeness, and that includes nightmares. I'm sure we've all had them. Nightmares come in the form of gut-wrenching, terrifying, confusing, and bewildering scenarios that make us pay attention. Something is going wrong. Something is threatening our well-being. That's what a nightmare is telling us. And I say that this is true for our waking lives as well. If we live today in what we believe is a nightmare of violence and crime and hatred and disrespect and destruction of the environment? Is that not a nightmare? Within every dream, though, and every nightmare, there is an answer. There is a solution to the problem. In fact, every dream brings a solution to whatever is going on in our lives. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the dreams. Otherwise, we wouldn't remember any dreams. And don't we remember nightmares? Absolutely. Even if we want to forget them, they hang in there. And if we have recurring nightmares, it's because we're not paying attention in our waking lives. It may be hard to discern the symbolism of dreams, but it's not impossible. And we can look at our waking lives as symbolic parts of our lives too. For me, being awake is only a waking dream. It works the same way, except that I have a physical focus on it. Specific remedies for handling problems in our lives and handling situations that may affect our physical body, our social life, different parts of our whole selves. There are specific remedies for people, but there are also some general ones, which I think that we could all use, some guidelines that we could all use to utilize and recreate the well-being that we were born with and for which we were created. The whole world is geared for well-being. If you look into nature, even when things are destroyed, they find a way to come back. Do not plants rise out of the ashes of lava? Yep. So it is possible and we know that the universe is geared for well-being, and we're part of the universe. We are also geared for well-being, but we have the idea that we can control it. We can resist it, we can push it back, and that's what causes our suffering. But we can do something about it. Every character, everything, every event in a dream, and I believe as well in waking life, is symbolic and connected to who we are. It's unconscious material that comes up in a dream, and as Carl Jung said, and I like to copy Jeremy Taylor, who says, the trouble with the unconscious is that it's unconscious. So it's hard to know that, but that's where the dreams come in and bring this stuff up to the surface, and we go, what was that about? It brings greater awareness and understanding of our motivations, our emotions, and our thoughts, if we pay attention. Our waking lives are informed by our dreams, and even if we do not remember them, they will still continue to work with us. The dreams will actually bring information to us in waking life to make it more clear. We don't think it has anything to do with anything, but it does. It's all one. So, I'd like to talk about a waking dream. A waking dream is something that goes on in ordinary life, but I would like to talk about it in the form of making a dream your vision. Making a dream like Dr. Martin Luther King's dream, his dream of people working and playing together. It was what motivated him. It was the vision of the world that he had for himself and for all other oppressed peoples. It informed everything he did and said. It was his mission statement. It was his covenant with himself. The power of his vision was so strong that it attracted many others who were burning for a desire for a world of justice and liberty and equality. Many of them, including Dr. King, died in the pursuit of that dream by the hands of those who did not agree with them and we're frightened by the change of order and the control that the achievement of the dream would imply to their way of life. The civil rights movement was their nightmare. So why do we still have this nightmare? Like a recurring dream, like a recurring nightmare? We haven't resolved the issues. Some things, yes, but we have a long way to go. And I imagine that if you grew up during the civil rights movement era, or you learned about it in school or other places, you identified with King's Dream. And I say that because you are here today at this Unitarian Universalist congregation at Murray Grove, and as a member or a friend or even a visitor. So something about what this religion, what this faith offers to you has some connection to you. And the sixth principle is the connection today for a community, a goal of a world community of peace and liberty and justice. The Reverend Sean Parker Dennison of the Tree of Life congregation in Illinois, he says this: the sixth principle, excuse me, the sixth principle seems extravagant in its hopefulness and improbable in its prospects. Can we continue to say that we want world community, peace, liberty, and justice for all? Excuse me. The world is full of genocide, abuse, terror, and war. What have we gotten ourselves into? As naive or impossible as the sixth principle may seem, I'm not willing to give up on it. In the face of our culture's apathy and fear, I want to imagine and help create a powerful vision of peace by peaceful means, liberty by liberatory means, and justice by just means. I want us to believe and to live as if we believe that a world community with peace, liberty, and justice is possible. There is no guarantee that we will succeed, but I can assure you that we will improve ourselves and improve the world just by trying. W.E.B. Du Bois believed that the only way we will achieve this dream is to instill in our children that it is possible when we live with integrity. He asked these questions in the novel, The Ordeal of Mansart, a novel he wrote when he was in his 80s. This is what he asked: how shall integrity face oppression? What shall honesty do in the face of deception? Decency in the face of insult? Self-defense before blows? How shall decency and accomplishment meet despising, detraction, and lies? Those are some really deep questions to ponder. These are questions that are answered with nonviolence. These are questions that are asked of us every day, not just of those who march militantly in peaceful demonstrations, but every day when we have connection to every other human being. Even if we stay at home and don't see anybody all day, we still can connect and think about these questions. How will I face indecency? How will I face an insult? Will I respond in like? Is that carrying out the principles that I believe in? I am not in concert with the principles of Unitarian Universalism if I accept and believe them and I use insulting or demeaning names against political figures who I don't like, or even at other drivers who cut me off in traffic, even though they can't hear me. If I hurl an insult in the quiet of my car, I'm still throwing out something that's not in keeping with who I want to be. Do I live in a way that upholds my beliefs in the 7 principles? That is the question that I add to those questions of W.E.B. Du Bois. On these grounds where we sit today, John Murray preached about God's universal love. What does that mean? The 6th principle doesn't include love in that statement. But could we have peace liberty, and justice without love? I'd like to see a dream that we could all hold, a vision of a better world. Now, I have a dream that we're going to have a meeting house built here on the grounds. It'll be it'll be at Route 9. And that's what I'm working for now. And I think that that's wonderful, and that's really going to be it. But that's not the end. That's the means to getting to the vision of peace, liberty, and justice for all. This is a place where we can come together and strengthen each other in spirit, in camaraderie, in eating together, and in conversing together, and being together, where we can strengthen ourselves and be strong for those days when somebody hurls you an insult, somebody cuts you off in traffic, somebody betrays you. That's why we need to have a place to come together. But we come together here. We can come together in other places. So why do we need a meeting house? One of the reasons, I think, is because this is the historic place where John Murray came and preached about universalism for the first time in America. Because Thomas Potter believed in his dream that a preacher would come and speak those words. He rejected the ideas that other preachers came through. He listened to them. He disagreed with them, but he gave them hospitality nonetheless. He opened his home to them. Every person who came through his yard, his grounds here, this was his farm. Every person that came through was offered shelter and food. Even if he disagreed with them, even if he didn't like them, even if he never invited them back again. He offered them all. He didn't know John Murray, but something told him that John Murray was coming. Some preacher was coming, and he was going to preach universal love. That was Thomas Potter's dream. As a Unitarian Universalist, I believe that I have to carry on that dream. That there is a universal love. That's what holds this world together. And I want to be a part of that. So let's let our dream be greater. Greater than the establishment of a meeting house. Greater than satisfaction with material goods. Greater than having wonderful family and relationships. Let it be greater. Let it be the vision of peace, liberty, and justice. Let that be the prize that we're always looking for in every day, every single action that we take. We cannot wait for that to happen. We can't wait for the meeting house to be built. We have to start today. We must begin today in love. So make your dream or vision the kind of world that you want for yourself and for future generations.